There is a mystery that lives in the quiet places of your soul. A secret between you and heaven. The moment you begin to see with eyes of faith, something invisible starts moving in your favor. Many people chase after money, but those who understand the spiritual law of provision know that it is not money that should be pursued. It is vision that must be cultivated. When you carry a divine vision in your heart, it becomes a magnet in the unseen realm, pulling the resources you need out of the invisible into the visible. The word says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, meaning faith gives shape, texture, and reality to what once did not exist. When you believe with your whole being, when your inner sight is fixed upon the promise and not upon the lack, then the provision begins to organize itself around you. There are moments when you must go into your secret place and speak with the language of faith. When you close your mouth to the world and open your heart to the Spirit, you step into a higher law, a divine economy where thoughts become things and unseen promises take form. You might look at your wallet and see emptiness, but faith sees fullness. You might look at your situation and feel surrounded by impossibility, but heaven is not moved by the emptiness you see, it is moved by the faith you hold. That is why, when you say nothing to everyone and speak only to God, you begin to activate what others cannot understand. People often ask, how can money appear out of nowhere? It is not the paper that appears, it is the opportunity, the favor, the divine alignment that comes from the unseen hand of provision. God has many ways to send what you need, through people, through timing, through open doors. But the secret is it does not begin outside of you, it begins inside of you. Your vision, your confession, your inner alignment with divine truth becomes the womb that gives birth to provision. You cannot receive what you have not seen in your spirit. You cannot walk into abundance if you have already agreed with lack. When you talk too much about your vision, you invite doubt, envy, and spiritual noise that can suffocate your miracle. The early sprout must be hidden until it becomes strong enough to survive the wind. In the same way, your faith must be protected in silence until it grows roots. Many people lose their miracle because they tell everyone too soon. They expose what is holy to the careless ears of those who cannot believe. There is a divine reason why the greatest breakthroughs are conceived in silence. Because silence is the shield of faith. So when you have a dream, when you receive a promise, when you sense something stirring in your spirit, don't tell everyone. Go into the secret place. Whisper your hope to heaven. Let your faith rise in quiet confidence. Speak to your circumstance not with panic, but with authority. When you stop begging and start believing, the atmosphere around you begins to shift. The unseen realm responds to the sound of faith, not the noise of fear. Every great miracle begins with stillness. The world tells you to talk, to explain, to prove yourself. But the Spirit says, be still and know. In that stillness, creative power begins to move. Invisible forces start arranging themselves to serve your need. This is not magic, it is divine law. What you believe in silence will manifest in time. Money, favor, and opportunity are drawn to the heart that refuses to doubt. If you align your thoughts with abundance, gratitude, and faith, then what you need will come. Sometimes through unexpected ways, sometimes through delayed timing, but it will come. The power of 2 minutes spent in quiet faith can outweigh hours of anxiety. When you listen not to fear, but to divine truth, something awakens within you. The energy of worry turns into the energy of expectation. The atmosphere around you begins to obey the confidence inside you. You don't chase, you attract. You don't strive, you align. You don't beg, you believe. And in that sacred stillness, provision begins to flow. That is why when you hear this message, don't just listen with your mind. Listen with your heart. Let faith settle like warm oil over your fears. Believe that what you need is already being arranged. Trust that unseen hands are working behind the curtain of time. When you hold your peace and keep your faith, money doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of everywhere. Every door that was once closed begins to sense your confidence and opens in your favor. Every opportunity that once ignored you begins to notice your presence. The divine economy recognizes the language of faith. So listen carefully, your silence is not emptiness, it is power. Your faith is not wishful thinking, it is substance. Your lack is not the end. It is the beginning of manifestation. Close your mouth to doubt. Open your heart to faith, and the invisible will start to take form before your eyes. When you stop talking to everyone and start communing with heaven, you will find that money doesn't have to come from where you expect. It simply comes from where God has already prepared it. When faith becomes the air you breathe, the entire environment around you begins to respond to that vibration. The unseen world is not silent, it listens. It listens to your words, your emotions, your expectations. If your heart is saturated with fear, you attract limitation. But if your heart is filled with faith, you create an atmosphere where the impossible becomes possible. The atmosphere of faith is not something you enter once a week in prayer. It is something you carry everywhere you go. It's a field of spiritual energy that reshapes everything it touches. Your business, your relationships, your opportunities, your health. There are people who walk into a room and everything feels heavy, uncertain, closed. Then there are those who carry such peace, such unshakable trust in God's provision, that even problems start finding solutions in their presence. This is not charisma, it is spiritual atmosphere. When you live in faith, you become like a walking sanctuary. Your spirit radiates divine order, and life rearranges itself to bless you. Money, favor, and opportunities are drawn to that frequency of calm confidence. You no longer chase blessings, blessings start chasing you. Many people try to fix their outer situation without fixing the inner atmosphere. They pray for abundance but carry a mindset of scarcity. They declare prosperity but speak words of doubt. The divine realm doesn't respond to contradiction. It responds to consistency. If you believe God is your source, then your tone, your posture, and your choices must reflect that belief. Faith is not pretending everything is fine. It is knowing that everything will align. It's standing firm when logic fails. It's trusting that the invisible hand of God is weaving threads of provision that you cannot yet see. Faith has a fragrance. It releases confidence into the air. It lifts the heavy atmosphere of fear and creates a divine climate for miracles. When you wake up in the morning, you can choose to breathe faith or breathe worry. If you breathe faith, you start your day expecting something good to happen. That expectation becomes a seed that heaven honors. God moves where faith is present. Faith is not noise. It is energy. It is vibration. It is agreement with the higher reality of abundance. When you surround yourself with faith-filled thoughts, your energy shifts. The heaviness that once limited your progress begins to dissolve. Ideas begin to come. People who carry answers begin to appear. Doors that were once locked begin to open. It is as if faith changes the gravity around you, pulling resources toward you rather than pushing them away. You don't even have to strive. Things begin to align naturally because your inner world has been reprogrammed to receive. You must guard the atmosphere around your vision. Don't let negative conversations pollute your space. Don't let fear whisper louder than faith. You can't build abundance while rehearsing lack. Speak words that agree with heaven. Say, provision is coming, even when you see none. Say, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, even when the account is empty. The spiritual atmosphere listens and records every word you speak. Words are containers of power. They carry energy that shapes matter. The atmosphere of faith does not come from shouting or emotional intensity. It comes from still trust. You can be calm and yet powerful, quiet and yet unshakable. The calmness of faith is more powerful than the panic of fear. When you learn to stay steady inside, heaven begins to release what you need outside. Your calmness is a signal that you trust the divine process, and God honors that trust. In that atmosphere, miracles are not rare, they are natural. Money does not fall from the sky, but it finds you through divine coordination. You might get a call, an idea, a door you never noticed before. That is the unseen world responding to your belief. You didn't force it. You aligned with it. That is the difference between those who struggle and those who flow. One tries to make things happen. The other lets faith create an atmosphere where things naturally happen. When you live in the atmosphere of faith, you live in the rhythm of grace. You stop worrying about timing because you know timing belongs to God. You stop fearing shortage because you know supply is endless. You stop doubting your worth because you know heaven invests only in what it values. and you are deeply valued. Every time you affirm your trust, you strengthen that atmosphere around you. Every time you refuse to fear, you expand your field of abundance. You cannot see air, but you can feel it move. You cannot see faith, but you can watch its results. Just as wind carries seeds across distances, faith carries blessings across time. What you speak today in faith travels through the unseen and returns as provision tomorrow. That is how supernatural supply manifests. You become a living magnet of divine order, not by striving harder, but by believing deeper. So protect your atmosphere. Don't let it be crowded with doubt, gossip, or envy. Keep it sacred, filled with gratitude, filled with expectation. Keep repeating silently, I am surrounded by divine abundance. Everything I need is already on its way. When that becomes your inner song, heaven sings in harmony with you. Then you will look around one day and realize money, opportunities, and favor have appeared as if from nowhere, because your faith created the atmosphere for them to exist. When God plants a vision inside your heart, it is not meant for everyone to hear. It is a sacred seed, fragile and pure, waiting to grow in the soil of your faith. Yet so many destroy their own miracle because they speak too soon, too freely, to people who were never meant to understand. The danger is not always in opposition. Sometimes it is in careless conversation. When you share your divine dream with unbelieving ears, you expose it to a climate that cannot sustain it. Faith is like fire. It must be protected from the wind of doubt. The moment you speak your vision to someone who does not believe, something begins to shift in the unseen realm. Words are spiritual, they carry energy. When someone responds with disbelief, sarcasm, or envy, that energy becomes a weight against your spirit. You may walk away smiling, but their unbelief has already started whispering to your faith. What if it's not possible? And that whisper grows if you do not silence it quickly. Every great calling requires the discipline of silence. There are people who will never see what you see, not because they are bad, but because their eyes have not been opened to that level of faith. When you tell them your dream, they measure it through the lens of their own limitations. They cannot imagine what God has whispered to you in your secret place. To them, your vision sounds unrealistic, too big, too impossible. But to heaven, it is already done. That's why Jesus often performed miracles in private. He understood the principle of spiritual isolation. Faith thrives in an atmosphere of belief, but it withers in the shadow of doubt. Sometimes, the ones closest to you are the least able to believe in your dream. They have seen your past, your weaknesses, your mistakes, and they use those memories as evidence against your potential. But God never calls the qualified, He qualifies the called. The moment you begin to walk in divine purpose, even your imperfections become tools in His hand. You must learn to protect your revelation until it is strong enough to stand on its own. The seed of faith must first grow roots before it can grow branches. When you tell everyone too early, you expose your seed to storms it cannot yet endure. There are spiritual laws that govern growth: silence, patience, trust. You don't plant a seed and keep digging it up to show others. You cover it, you water it, and you wait. Faith is the soil that keeps it hidden until the time of manifestation. The more sacred the dream, the deeper the silence that must guard it. Unbelieving ears can kill a dream faster than any failure. Doubt is contagious. It spreads through words and looks, through the subtle tone of someone who says, "Are you sure?" That is why, when God gives you a promise, He expects you to hold it close, to nurture it in prayer, not debate it in conversation. When you share divine things with those who cannot discern them, you are casting pearls before swine, offering treasure to those who cannot value it. Not everyone deserves access to your sacred thoughts. There is also a deeper reason silence matters. When you talk too much about your vision, you may begin to live off the admiration of people instead of the approval of God. Early praise can become a substitute for actual progress. You start feeling fulfilled just by talking about it, not by building it. True faith doesn't need validation, it needs focus. You are not called to convince, you are called to create. The time for testimony comes after manifestation, not before. Many miracles die in the stage of conversation. Someone shares what God told them, and another person, with worldly reasoning, explains why it can't happen. Slowly, the dreamer begins to doubt. That's why divine visions are born in solitude. The quiet places where only your spirit and heaven speak. If you look through scripture, you'll notice that the most powerful moments of revelation happen when people are alone. God spoke to Moses in the wilderness, to Elijah on the mountain, to Mary in private. The sacred voice often chooses silence as its companion. You must understand that secrecy is not fear, it is wisdom. There are seasons to reveal and seasons to conceal. The caterpillar does not announce its transformation, it hides in the cocoon until wings are ready. Likewise, your vision must be covered until it matures. Tell it to God. Write it down in your journal. Pray over it daily. But do not hand it to people who will dissect it with logic instead of nurturing it with faith. If you want your miracle to grow, you must protect it from noise. Noise distracts, dilutes, and delays. The world is filled with opinions, but heaven honors obedience. Don't seek approval, seek alignment. Don't explain, just believe. You owe no one an explanation for what God whispered to you in the night. In time, your results will speak louder than your words ever could. The ones who laughed will see. The ones who doubted will wonder. But none of that matters, because by the time they notice, your vision will already have taken form. The key is to stay quiet in the process. Let your silence be your strength. Let your faith be your language. Let your manifestation be your answer. In the realm of the Spirit, what is hidden today will be revealed tomorrow, but only to those who were patient enough to guard it with sacred silence. There is a sacred power in silence, not the silence of fear or uncertainty, but the silence of faith. It is the quiet confidence that knows heaven has heard, that knows the promise has been spoken, and that knows no explanation is necessary. Silence is not emptiness, it is strength concealed. It is the invisible shield that guards what God is growing in you. Every miracle, before it becomes visible, must pass through a season of stillness. That stillness is the womb of manifestation. What is unseen is being formed, and silence is the atmosphere where creation takes shape. When you are silent, you give heaven room to work. You stop interfering with your own miracle by overtalking your doubts. You stop explaining your faith to those who do not understand it. You stop defending what only God can prove. In silence, your spirit grows stronger because it listens more than it speaks. You begin to hear the whispers of divine direction that are often lost in the noise of endless chatter. Many miss their blessing not because they lack faith, but because they lack stillness. They pray, but they don't pause. They believe, but they broadcast. The miracle you are waiting for is delicate. It needs protection from the winds of criticism, the storms of impatience, and the whispers of fear. Silence builds a hedge around it. Every time you choose not to speak in frustration, not to share in doubt, not to announce in haste, you are protecting the sacred process. Just as a seed must stay buried until it germinates, your dream must stay hidden until it is strong enough to face the light. If you dig it up too soon with words, you interrupt its growth. When you hold your peace, you create a spiritual boundary. The enemy cannot read your thoughts. He can only hear your words. The moment you speak in fear, you give him material to work with. But when you stay silent, he is blind to your next move. Silence confuses opposition. It keeps your spiritual path hidden from destructive forces that thrive on distraction. Sometimes the best warfare is quiet faith, the kind that smiles while waiting, the kind that trusts even when nothing moves, the kind that praises inwardly when everything looks empty outwardly. You see, miracles are not loud. The most powerful acts of God often arrive quietly. A door opens without warning. A need is met without noise. A problem dissolves without explanation. That's because heaven does not need to announce itself. When God works, he doesn't need applause. He seeks agreement. And silence is your way of agreeing with him without interrupting the process. You don't rush it. You don't question it. You don't advertise it. You just rest in the assurance that it's happening. Silence also heals your relationship with time. When you stop talking about when and how, you begin to trust that divine timing is not delay but design. The world will always push you to hurry, to prove, to show progress. But the spiritual path teaches patience. Silence slows the noise of anxiety and tunes your heart to the rhythm of heaven. You begin to sense that things are already aligning, even if you can't see them yet. And in that sensing, peace is born. That peace is the first sign that your miracle is near. When you are silent before God, you are saying, I trust you more than my understanding. That kind of trust becomes a magnet for provision. It pulls resources, people, and opportunities toward you. The unseen world recognizes silence as faith in action. Heaven does not need your explanation, it responds to your expectation. When you rest in quiet trust, you vibrate at the frequency of creation itself. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop worrying and start aligning. Silence shifts the spiritual atmosphere around you. It turns chaos into clarity, noise into guidance, scarcity into flow. Even Jesus practiced this mystery. Before great miracles, he withdrew into quiet places. Before choosing his disciples, before feeding thousands, before facing the cross, he went into silence. Why? Because silence recalibrates your spirit. It empties you of distraction and fills you with divine instruction. It's in those silent moments that the voice of God becomes clear. That's when he tells you, move now, or wet, or turn here. Without silence, you miss those cues. And missing those cues often means missing the miracle. Sometimes, silence is your most powerful testimony. When people doubt you, remain calm. When they question your calling, smile gently. When they mock your faith, stay still. Because soon, your results will speak for you. The loudest proof of divine favor is quiet manifestation. The world may not understand how it happened, but those who stayed close to heaven will know silence did it. So protect your miracle with stillness. When you feel pressure to explain, resist it. When you feel the urge to prove, hold your peace. When your mind tells you to panic, breathe and stay silent. The same God who created the universe in silence is shaping your breakthrough in silence now. The more you trust, the less you need to talk. The less you talk, the more heaven moves. And one day soon, the silence that once seemed empty will echo with abundance. And you'll realize it wasn't quiet because nothing was happening. It was quiet because everything was.